It all started out like a typical Thursday at my high school. Everyone was getting excited for the weekend and the upcoming backwards dance. The backwards dance was something that my school does every year. The girls asked the boys to the dance instead of the boys asking the girls. There was usually some big proposals when girls would get down on one knee and ask their boyfriend to the dance with them. One time, a girl even painted her entire body and ran through the school naked, asking her boyfriend if he would go to the dance with her. Things can get crazy, but I'd never really thought about going to the dance. I'd never been to a dance before, at least not with a boy. My best friend forever, Alicia, knew how much I liked Blake, the cutest boy on the basketball team. However, she also knew talking to Blake makes me stutter, slur my words, and basically make myself look like a fool. I've had a crush on Blake since third grade, and although we have been friends for some time, we've never been close enough to where I could be my real self around him. Apparently, Alicia didn't care about how crazy I felt in front of Blake, because on this Thursday morning, as soon as she saw Blake strolling into the boys' bathroom next to her locker, she quickly grabbed me by both my shoulders and shoved me into the bathroom, slamming the door behind me. Now, mind you, I've never been in a boys' bathroom. I have to say, it looks pretty similar to a girl's bathroom, except probably a bit smellier, and the urinals. Ew. At first, I was super confused as to why she would so forcefully put me in the bathroom. What was this horrible prank she was playing on me? I did not want to get in trouble if I was caught in the boys' bathroom. I tried to push the door open, but Alicia was standing in front of it. From the outside of the door, I heard her say, "You'll thank me for this later." I didn't think I would. And now I was afraid to turn around. I didn't know what Blake was doing, but there was a whole row of urinals behind me. I hadn't even kissed Blake yet. I definitely didn't want to see him using the bathroom. What if someone else was in here too? Oh no, my face was starting to turn beet red. "Kara?" Blake said, surprised. I spun around quickly and saw that he was stepping up to the sink. I let go of the door handle and gave him the weirdest, hopefully cute, smile I could muster. Hi, Blake," I said, wiping my sweaty palms on my jeans. "What are you doing here?" He pointed to the sink and turned on the water. "I had to take a leak. The question is, what are you doing here?" he asked, looking at me through the mirror above the sink. Man, he was hot. I pushed the door once more to see if Alicia was still there. The door wouldn't budge, and I heard a quick "nope" from the other side. Dang it. She's trapped me in the bathroom with a hot boy. I stepped away from the door and walked closer to Blake. "Alicia locked me in here." "Why?" he asked, looking at the door, then back at me. "She wants me to ask you something." My hands were trembling. I needed something to play with, but all I could see were dirty paper towels, so I stuck my hands in my pockets and went on. "I was hoping that maybe you would go to the dance with me," I asked, but it probably didn't sound as cool in real life as it does here. He turned off the water in the sink and stared at me. At this point, I could look anywhere but at his face. If he said no, I would be devastated. Not only because of the rejection, but because I know he would go tell everyone I stalked him in the boys' bathroom. All of a sudden, a huge smile spread across his face. "You didn't have to come try and see me naked to ask me. I'd love to go to the dance with you." My eyes lit up and I almost screamed in excitement. Instead, I kept my cool and nodded. "Awesome! I can't wait. My dress is blue, so see you Saturday," he said as he walked toward the bathroom door. He tried to push it open, but Alicia was still there. "Stop being annoying and ask him, Kara!" she shouted from the other side. "It's Blake." I said yes. The door swung open and Alicia ran inside to give me a hug. "Now, when you guys get married, promise you won't have your ceremony in the bathroom," she exclaimed. I blushed just as the first bell rang. Once more, Alicia shoved me into Blake and we gave each other a big hug. My face was still red as a tomato. Alicia put her arms around my shoulders and gave me a big squeeze as we said goodbye to Blake. I squealed in excitement, almost jumping up and down. I said, "As much as I hate you right now, I love you even more." Alicia just laughed with an "I told you so" look in her eyes. The rest of the day went by without a hitch. Alicia and I were laughing in first period, thinking of places to go for dinner before the dance, and people to hang out with afterward. I was hoping since Blake was on the basketball team that he would know of some awesome parties we could go to after the dance. Alicia had a boyfriend, Thomas, who she'd been dating for over a year. He was going to pick us up in his car, and we figured we could just meet Blake at the restaurant. Everything changed around lunch. When lunchtime came around, all I heard whispered throughout the halls was how super dorky Kara asked out Blake. And he said yes, since he felt really awkward because Kara was watching him pee. Obviously, I'm Kara, and this isn't how it happened. You can't convince a bunch of teenagers anything different, though. Everyone was staring at me as I walked to lunch. I tried to hold my head high, but the whispering was getting to me. As soon as I saw Blake in the lunchroom, I went right up to him and said, "What's this I hear about you getting asked out by a dorky Kara in the bathroom?" I crossed my arms. I hope I looked intimidating, but probably not. After all, I'm only 5 feet tall. Blake was 6'1" and towered over me. Without even looking down at me, he said, "What are you talking about? I don't even know you." Just as I scoffed and was about to turn away, Alicia came up behind me with her phone in her hand. It showed a picture of Blake and I hugging after we came out of the bathroom. She showed all of his friends, which started a round of oohs and ahs. Blake was trapped now. His friends were waiting expectantly for him to say something, but he only hung his mouth open. Alicia was about to start talking again, but I put my hand on her arm to stop her. "I really just don't think you're masculine enough for me." I then looked at his friends and said, "Just so you know, big shoes don't always mean big." Then Alicia pulled me away. The teacher was coming, and she didn't want me to get yelled at. We could hear Blake's friends making fun of him as we walked away. Everyone in the lunchroom was staring, so I put my head in my hands and ran to the bathroom. The girls' bathroom this time. Alicia followed me and pulled me into the stall. I was really upset because I didn't understand why Blake would be so mean when he was so nice in the bathroom. Soon, we heard the door open and the scuffling of feet. 2 blue Air Jordans popped up under the stall, and a knock came on the stall door. "Kara?" It was Blake. "Get out," I said, sniffling. "I'm sorry I said that you were dorky and made fun of you for asking me to dance. The truth is, I don't know how to dance, and I actually have a crush on Alicia." My mouth dropped. My stomach flipped. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Alicia quickly grabbed Blake by the hand and pulled him into the stall. What happened next, I will never forget for the rest of my life. I thought Alicia was going to kiss Blake, but instead, she grabbed him by the back of the head and thrust it into the toilet. "Quick, Kara, flush!" she screamed. I'm not sure why I reached for that toilet handle, but I did, and we gave Blake the best swirly I've ever seen. Granted, I've only seen that one, but still, it was the best. Alicia pulled Blake's head up quickly, his face wet and his nose running. "Why did you say yes to my best friend if you didn't actually want to go to the dance with her?" Blake looked at Alicia. "I wanted to get close to you." She dunked his head again, and I flushed. "For one thing, I have a boyfriend, and for another thing, I would never, ever, ever date someone my BFF had a crush on." We may have flushed him a couple more times, but since we were afraid someone would come into the bathroom, I finally told Alicia to stop. He was drenched, and who knows the last time that toilet was cleaned, or how many girls had sat on it since this morning. Blake was able to stand up, but as soon as he got to the stall door, Alicia said, "And you better not ever tell anyone who did this to you. Oh, and one more thing. You better go tell everyone that you lied about Kara and that she is way too cool for you to go out with." "What if I don't?" Blake asked. "Then next time, it won't be a swirly." She lunged at him like she was going to hit him, but he jumped and ran out of the stall. When he left the bathroom, I couldn't do anything but stare at Alicia. I had never seen her like this in my life. She was such a badass and stuck up for me. I loved her more than ever. The next day at school, Friday, everyone was talking about how Blake didn't show up. He said he was sick, but everyone believed he was too embarrassed to come back to school after what happened the day before. People kept coming up to me and asking if I really saw Blake with his pants down in the bathroom, and all I had to do was scrunch my nose and say, "Unfortunately." Blake hasn't bothered me since that day. In fact, we had a great time at the dance on Saturday. We as in Alicia and I. We went together, She let her boyfriend stay home. We spent the whole day getting ready, doing our hair and makeup. It was probably the best day of my life. And to think all of this happened because she pushed me into the boys' bathroom and locked me in there.
I felt a weird tingling sensation in my legs when I woke up alone, restrained to an operating table without a clue what was happening. I looked around and saw myself hooked up to lots of machines and had a drip in my arm. And the worst thing was, I had no idea where I was. It was like I had been drugged or my memory had been wiped without a clue where I've been before this moment. This was the scariest moment of my life. I had no idea what to do. I felt a sharp pain in my stomach. My head felt fuzzy and my mouth was dry. I tried to shout out for help, but my voice just came out as a croak. I couldn't move my limbs. I was so frightened. I was all alone and no one could hear me call for help. After a few minutes, a woman came into the room. She was dressed in a white robe and her face was covered in a white mask. She looked like a nurse you'd see in a horror movie. Was I in a hospital? When she noticed that I was awake, she started talking to me in a language I didn't understand. Her tone was weird and aggressive, and I had no idea what she was saying. I started moving my hands and legs, trying to release myself from the machines I was hooked up to. "Get me out of here!" I screamed in pain. But the terror didn't stop there. The scary woman walked over to me and pulled back the blanket covering me and lifted up my gown, which revealed a large bandage on my stomach. What had they done to me? I cried and started to scream louder. With a quick move, I managed to release my hand and I ripped the bandage off even though it hurt and saw a fresh scar and stitches underneath. I had been cut open. All kinds of thoughts started racing through my head. Maybe I had been drugged and someone had taken me to sell my organs on the black market. Or maybe I had been kidnapped and was going to be held for ransom until my mom and dad paid the kidnappers their life savings. Or maybe I'd be murdered and my family would never find my body. It was then that I completely lost it. I screamed more and started kicking and hitting out at the nurse. I have to say I'm not usually a violent person. I was just so frightened that I lost all control. Then an even worse pain set in and I looked down at my stomach where the pain was coming from. My stitches had blood coming out of them. The nurse pressed an alarm and more nurses ran in. 2 of them strapped my arms down and another strapped down my legs. I was now really frightened. I was trapped and they could do whatever they wanted to me and I was powerless to stop them. Then a doctor came in and got close to the bed. He was tall and had a mean look on his face. Then he did something that made me even more scared. I was so busy looking at his face that I didn't see what he did, but I felt a sharp pain in my arm. I didn't know what it was, but my vision started to blur and I slowly started falling asleep. He must have given me something to knock me out. I couldn't move and I couldn't resist it anymore. My eyes closed and I was powerless to open them. I didn't know how much time had passed before I woke up the second time, but when I looked beside me, I saw a plate of food that looked weird. I made a guess that this food was for me. Everything they were serving looked mashed and smelled disgusting, but I was very hungry and ended up eating most of it. The room was empty and the drug's effect was wearing off, and that's when I started to remember where I was last before I came here. I knew I wasn't in my home country because not too long ago I was traveling abroad with my 2 besties, Ali and Dahlia, for my 14th birthday. We weren't alone though, my father came with us. My head hurt and I started panicking again when the memory was coming back to me. I knew I was with them not too long ago in the streets of Malaysia. We were eating fried squids from a food chain, but something really bad had happened. The streets were so crowded, and as I was walking with my father and friends, I started feeling a sharp pain in my stomach after all the food I ate. I assumed that it was normal because I was trying out new food, and that's when my father and 2 friends had disappeared. I couldn't see them anymore, and I became very anxious as the pain in my stomach got worse and worse. And that was the last thing I remembered, being lost in a foreign country alone, which explained the whole situation I was in at the moment. Obviously, a gang had kidnapped me after noticing how clueless and lost I was. Oh my god, everything was finally making sense, and I started getting into a state of terror I never felt before. I needed to get out of there right now. My thoughts were disturbed as another person came in. It was the same woman with the white mask, and this time she had pills in her hands that she wanted me to take. When I said no, 2 other men came in and I knew I had to do it, so I decided to play it smart and took the pills and hid them under my tongue and spit it out as soon as they left the room. At that moment, I knew I had to find a way to leave this place, and that's exactly what I did the next morning. After I woke up, a man with a blue mask was standing over me. I was dizzy and felt too weak to move despite being super scared. I looked at the person standing over me with tears in my eyes and asked him politely if I could leave. I begged him in hopes that he'll feel sorry enough for me to let me go. To my shock, this guy with the blue mask called another man who seemed to speak some English, and when I repeated that I needed to leave, he told me with a loud voice, "Money or no leave." "I don't have any money," I screamed, and he replied, "This a big problem. Your mom and dad will pay." It seemed like it didn't matter how much I begged them to let me go. They couldn't care less about my well-being. Only God knows what they would do to me if I didn't pay them. Would they hurt me? Or had they already started removing my organs to sell? I started crying, even though I tried to talk and reason with the man. I couldn't help it. I just cried and cried. Eventually, the 2 men gave up and left me alone in the room. After a while, I managed to calm myself down and realized what I needed to do. I had to escape. My arms and legs were still restrained and they were really tight, but after a lot of wriggling, I managed to pull my left arm free. Then I managed to undo the restraints on my right arm and my legs. I sat up. I felt lightheaded and my stomach hurt, but I didn't care. I looked down at myself. I was just wearing a gown and my feet were bare. I looked around the room and saw a bag with some clothes and shoes which looked kind of familiar. I tried to get out of bed, but I felt a sharp pain in my arm. I looked at it and saw the drip still attached. I pulled it out and had to stifle a scream. It hurt so much, and my blood spurted across the room as it came out. Somehow I managed to put on the clothes and shoes. I opened the door a crack. It was an empty corridor outside. I knew this could be my only chance before my kidnappers came back. I ran out of the room and down the corridor. I got to the end and there was a door I pushed open. On the other side were loads of people and beds and surrounded by people in masks and robes. The 2 men who had shouted at me were there too. When they saw me, they ran towards me. They looked so angry. I looked around. I needed to get out. I saw a door leading outside. I ran to it and flung myself against it. I was so dizzy that I could barely hold myself up. I fell outside in a heap on the floor. But I knew I couldn't stop. I stood up and started running. I was in a country that I knew nothing in. Everything looked foreign. The buildings looked different. The cars looked different. And so did the people. I honestly had no plan on how I should get by. But that didn't matter. I just knew that I needed to get away from the place I was being held captive in. I got up and ran, even though I could hear shouting behind me. But after a while, my legs gave way and I collapsed on the floor. I couldn't get up, so I started to crawl, but soon I felt arms around me. I screamed and shouted that I was being kidnapped, but everyone carried on and ignored me. Soon I felt a stabbing pain in my arm again. As the light was fading, I just felt that this was the end. It was dark for a long time before something really strange happened. I woke up after I heard loud voices in my room. When I opened my eyes, I saw that there were 3 policemen standing over there and chatting with my kidnappers. "Oh my God, they kidnapped me!" I screamed, but the policemen looked like they had no idea what I was saying. How could this situation even be real? They need to catch these bad guys and help me find my parents. But suddenly, I heard familiar voices, and then my mom and dad came in a hurry through my door. They looked so relieved to see me. My mom even started crying, and my kidnappers were standing right beside them, smiling. I screamed, "They kidnapped me!" But that's when my father and mother started laughing and called me silly. "These are doctors," my parents said. Then they explained that I wasn't kidnapped. It was something totally different. After I got lost the other day, my dad couldn't find me, and when he got back to the place I was gone. Apparently, as I was panicking while suffering from severe pain in my stomach, I had fainted on the sidewalk and I had to be transmitted to a hospital quickly. Later on, the doctors discovered that my appendix had burst. They said that the shock, stress, and new food I ate must have affected it. It also took my parents a while before they actually figured out where I was, which had also given them their own share of stress. Eventually, I was super glad that this whole nightmare passed. And I had to apologize so many times to the doctors who were treating me for the hard time I gave them.